Another day, two more Tigers expected to enter the transfer portal. We'll tell you what it means. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network on the face of planet Earth. Two more players we are now expecting to enter the transfer portal based on reports here on Friday. Over at LouisianaSports.net, I reported early Friday that Javien Toviano, a three-year junior safety, will enter the transfer portal. And then short time later, Hayes Fawcett of On3, who does great work, is reporting that DJ Chester will enter the transfer portal. So let's take them one at a time. We'll go chronologically. Toviano is first. We'll go to Chester second. So let's start with Toviano and what that means. I think it's important whenever we have these conversations, we kind of give you a little background as well. So remember, when Javien Toviano signed with LSU, he was one of the top safeties and top players in the country. So Toviano signed with LSU in 2023. And when he signed, he was the number 59 overall prospect in America out of Arlington. That's the Dallas area. So he was a safety out of a football factory in Arlington, well put together, built, well put together, young athlete. He's listed at 6'1", 197, and he came to LSU and actually had an immediate impact in that freshman season. What's interesting about Toviano, though, in that freshman year, he played in every game as a freshman. He played in 13 games and actually started 3 times. So Toviano looked like his career was on this great trajectory. But remember, 2023 was the worst defense in the history of LSU football. That was the year Jaden wins the Heisman, but LSU goes 9-3 because the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. So what did LSU do after 2023? They started hammering down on the portal on defense. So go into 2024. They moved Sage Ryan back to safety, and they brought in Jordan Gilbert. Jordan Gilbert was a kid from U-High, multi-year starter in the SEC at Texas A&M. So they went with the veteran guys with more experience, and they were better. Not particularly good, but they were better than they were. This year, what did they do? They go into the transfer portal. They had A.J. Halsey and Tamarcus Cooley. So much so that the incumbent Sage Ryan transfers and Jordan Gilbert takes a redshirt year. And maybe the bigger part of all of this is the fact that Deshaun Spears has emerged, right? Deshaun Spears became the nickel. Deshaun Spears became the guy that LSU, when they needed the next defensive back to go in, he was the guy. And we shared this in a previous episode. If you missed it, shout out to the Everydayers. But if you missed it, go check it out. If you look at the Pro Football Focus grades for LSU in 2025, the highest graded defensive player for the entire season for LSU is Deshaun Spears. Pro Football Focus, a 90.8 grade. There's only 2 players that had above a 90. Deshaun Spears at 90.8. Mansour Delane, yes, the unanimous All-American Mansour Delane at 90.7. So Spears, when he was on the field, was really good. He just played a total of 168 defensive snaps. Halsey, for example, your other safeties, Halsey played 702, and Cooley played, forgive me, I'm looking for it. Sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. Tamarcus Cooley played 693. So Cooley 693, Halsey 702, and then Spears 168. So basically, he was your dime. When you needed a 6th defensive back to go on the field, Spears was the next guy, which is why it'll be fascinating to watch just Deshaun Spears in the bowl game with no A.J. Halsey to see what it looks like for Spears playing 70 defensive snaps in a game instead of 15 to 20, right? So in any event, but Toviano is one of those guys who was just forced down by transfers and veterans. In a different era of football without transfers, this would have been the year where you likely would have seen Deshaun Spears and Javien Toviano as your starters. As it is, Javien Toviano effectively was relegated to a special teamer. On the season, he played a total of 65 snaps. And overwhelmingly, Toviano's snaps came over the last 2 years on special teams, I should say. So when you look at what Toviano did in 2023 as a freshman, he was a guy that played in every game, started 3 games at safety. He played 395 snaps. Actually, 228 of them came at wide corner, just 13 at free safety. So he was playing some cornerback for you in 2023 to show you how bad that defense was. A year later, he plays 45 snaps at corner, 11 at safety. The rest were all at on special teams. And then you go into this season in 2025 for Javien Toviano, 238 total snaps on the season. But as we mentioned, just about 60 or so of those were on defense. The overwhelming majority were on special teams. So Toviano, we know Halsey is out of eligibility. Toviano is transferring out. I think a few things that will be fascinating for next year. Spears and Cooley, it stands to reason, will be your starters. TaMarcus Cooley's back. Spears is a junior. They will be your starters at safety. What happens to Jordan Gilbert? Gilbert is going to play this bowl game at the star position in place of Harold Perkins. Is that his spot next year, or to get another veteran guy on the field? Does Jordan Gilbert transfer somewhere where he can go play safety? I don't know the answer to that question. What I can tell you is that for the bowl game, Spears and Cooley are going to start. The backups at safety are going to be Joel Rogers and freshman Jace Thomas. Those are going to be your 4 safeties on Saturday against University of Houston while Gilbert plays star. And then do you go into the portal and look for more safety help? Do you look at some of the incoming freshmen to maybe give you some depth? That'll be a fascinating thing to watch. But what's clear is for 2026, Spears and Cooley will be your starters at safety. Rogers, Thomas will be there as well. What happens with Jordan Gilbert, worth watching. But Toviano is going to hit the transfer portal. By the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. Toviano did not make the trip to Houston. So he will not play in the game. He did not make the trip. Toviano did not make the trip to Houston, and as I was told, actually has not been practicing with LSU for a couple of weeks, for several practices now during their workouts in Baton Rouge. So he was not with the team for the end of bowl prep in Baton Rouge and did not make the trip to Houston. So Tigers have a good plan defensively Saturday against Houston. We'll see what it means as they move forward into 2026. And of course, only Lane Kiffin knows, and his staff knows what they're going to potentially target in the transfer portal. So Toviano in the portal. The other player in the portal, as we learned on Friday, is DJ Chester. We'll break that down next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game. You're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, the momentum flips after a turnover, and FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Show's also brought to you by Game Time, and there's nothing quite like college football and college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moment you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I love being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so you know exactly what you're getting, what you're going to be looking at. You're not in front of a pole or something like that. And my favorite feature is that you know the prices, including fees, up front. So it makes the whole process stress-free. It's not one of those things where you think you're paying a certain price, you get to check out fees, and boom, it's a totally different price. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Toviano entered the portal a short time after Hayes Fawcett. Amazing job, by the way, from Hayes Fawcett, who, if you're not familiar with Hayes Fawcett, I became acquainted with actually whenever he was a high school football player in a rural town in Louisiana. And he started doing edits and put out on Twitter that if any recruit wanted to announce their commitment, he'd do their edit for free and their graphic. And all of a sudden, he became the guy. Well, On3 he did a very bright thing. They hired him basically as a guy to break news for them on high school commitments in portal, because they all give the news to Hayes because he makes their edits. So brilliant. Anyway, Hayes Fawcett announced DJ Chester will enter the transfer portal. Chester has had a really odd career arc. Like if you look at DJ Chester as a high school prospect, Chester was very highly regarded. And he is a massive dude. 6'6", 315. He was a consensus 4-star. 24/7 rated him as the number 54 overall prospect in America. Now, in the composite, right, you combine all the recruiting services, he was number 139. But 24/7 rated him number 54 in the country and the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country. So you're talking about a dude out of Georgia that was super highly regarded. He comes to LSU as a freshman in 2023. His true freshman season, appears in just 4 games, plays in 81 snaps. Again, that was the Jaden Daniels year where, you had in 2023 a really good and solid offensive line with all those returning starters. You had Campbell and Emory Jones and Dellinger and Frazier. You were solid. Well, you go into 2024 and you're losing your starting center in 2024. And so LSU kind of had a decision to make. Cohen Eccles was a center, but he's a true freshman. Chester was more of a guard. He's a big, giant, space-eating human, but he's also a guy that was a top 100 player in America, had been around for a year already. And they're like, what if we put our best guy available at center? Which is what they did. And in 2024, the offensive line with the guys I just mentioned, you had Campbell and Jones and Dellinger and Frazier, and then Chester. And Chester was by a mile your weak link, but he played and started all 13 games at center, even though he's not a center. I mean, think about it. If you're a guard, your job is put your hand in the ground, the ball is snapped, you get into someone's pads and move bodies. If you're the center, you have to know the cadence. Your hand is on the football. You have to snap the ball. You have to identify the Mike linebacker. You have to call protections. It's very complex to play center. And so you have a guy that's not a center playing out of position. And naturally, in 2024, DJ Chester was your lowest graded offensive lineman and really the weak link on that unit. So LSU goes into the transfer portal this year and they add Braylon Moore, the best center in the transfer portal. They identified their big need, their big weakness at center, and they go and sign the best guy at that position in Braylon Moore. And Braylon Moore, you hit. He was your best offensive lineman this year. So the thought being, though, is Chester probably now gets an opportunity to play his more natural position at guard. Well, you go into fall camp, and Chester, through spring and fall, was sort of a swing man. You see him playing center, you see him playing guard, he played some tackle. And ultimately, what LSU identified was that Chester was their sixth man. And so when you look at how DJ Chester sort of played this year, it was more of a, the sixth man that played every position. He played one position as an attached tight end, or one play. He played 229 snaps at center, 54 snaps at left tackle, 7 snaps at right tackle, and he played 6 snaps on field goal extra point. So while still he was predominantly Braylon Moore's backup at center when Braylon Moore went out after 1 snap against Louisiana Tech, Chester played the rest of the game. Braylon Moore did not play the Oklahoma game. Chester filled in and played the entire game at center in place of Braylon Moore at center. So primarily center, but in the opener against Clemson, when Tyree Adams went down, Chester went and played left tackle for a snap. So he was a valuable reserve there, but you're talking about a guy with tremendous upside, was a top 100 overall prospect, who's probably a guard, who's been asked to play center and tackle during his time at LSU, everything but his more natural position. Now, I would have been fascinated to see this year what it could have looked like if you had Moore at center, Josh Thompson at right guard. And what if you had said, okay, DJ Chester, left guard, that's going to be your spot? Well, you had Paul Mabenga there, who last year, when Garrett Dellinger was injured, Mabenga started the final month of the season at left guard. You had Cohen Eccles, who's a more natural center, but another highly regarded guy who beat out Mabenga for that guard spot. And you had inexperienced tackles. So after Adams and Weston Davis, you had a 5-star in Carius Kern, but he's a freshman. So the thought is, do you play the freshman or do you play the veteran and DJ Chester? So, remember how this all played out before the Ole Miss game, for example. LSU's playing Southeastern. DJ Chester gets a targeting penalty in the fourth quarter against Southeastern. He gets ejected. He's unable to play for the first half against Ole Miss. Weston Davis gets concussed in pregame, so you don't have Chester to start at right tackle. They start Kern at right tackle, and Kern sort of emerged because Kern is probably a better, more athletic, more natural tackle than Chester. So DJ Chester is probably a guy that is going to be better served going somewhere that they're going to play him at guard and say, hey, 6'6", 320-pound behemoth guy. Just put your hand to the ground and move bodies in front of you. That's going to serve him well. And I don't know that option was going to be there at LSU. But as we've talked about this LSU offensive line, I know there's some angst because now you've seen Kern, Eccles, and Chester all hit the portal. And I look at it 2 ways. Number one is your offensive line was the worst unit on your team this year, by far, not even a debate. We would all agree. The worst position group on the team this year for LSU was the offensive line. So you're losing players from the worst unit on your team. Is that bad? The other part of it is you have all of these guys, Chester, Kern, Eccles, Davis, Adams, Mabenga, all these guys that have gotten experience and have given you and have cut their teeth and you hope are better for it. And now you're not going to have them. So would you rather have these guys that finally garnered their experience, or will their experience pay off somewhere else? I look at it like this when I look at LSU's offensive line. What is paramount is you get Braylon Moore back. Moore has another year of eligibility. He did not go through senior day festivities. He came back from injury and is playing in the bowl game. If you get Braylon Moore back, massive. Josh Thompson is gone. Now we know Kern, Eccles, Chester also gone. If you get Adams, Weston Davis, Paul Mabenga all back for next year, and you go into the transfer portal and add a guard and a tackle, ideally you would have Moore at center, a transfer guard, transfer tackle, and then Adams, Davis, Mabenga, the rest of your unit there competing for the other 2 spots, and see how it plays out. And my sincere hope is that as we go through listen, Cohen Eccles was the number 227 player in the country. Chester was in the composite was number 134. Kern was number 49 in the composite rankings. These are highly regarded guys, big, athletic, physical dudes that were highly regarded, that had offers from everybody in the country, and they picked LSU. Did LSU miss on all of these players? That's hard for me to believe. I think development was bad. Some of it certainly falls on the players. I think scheme was bad. You look at Ole Miss by contrast, which was, top 20 in the country in fewest sacks allowed and was one of the best rushing offenses in the country. Ole Miss didn't have more talented offensive linemen than LSU. Their scheme fit their personnel. And so I think that is going to be paramount for Kiffin, your new offensive line coach, coming in and challenging the guys that stay to fit the scheme and finding guys in the portal that fit what you want to do. And hopefully that unit, as a result, is much better in 26 and beyond. But as of now, Javien Toviano, DJ Chester, 2 more players entering the transfer portal. That's now 11 LSU Tigers that have hit the portal. If you're scoring at home, Kern, Colin Hurley, Caleb Jackson, Jawan Johnson, Ahmad Bro, Ashton Stamps, Jelani Watkins, Kylan Billiot, Cohen Eccles, and then Javien Toviano, DJ Chester are the latest. As we learn of more players going to the transfer portal, we'll certainly let you know as we are inching closer. Friday, January 2nd, the portal window opens, and Lane Kiffin, this much anticipated, much awaited portal cycle as LSU builds its 2026 roster, will start to get some finality there. And we'll be here for you and with you all along with Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us here. Do me a favor, if you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you also for watching every weekday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.